Okay, thank you. Good morning. It's Dr. Reese's 2-year anniversary. It is my 3-month anniversary. So I was looking at the calendar today, and I remember when I was first asked to come here and make this presentation on sustainability, I think I was on the job my first week when the invitation came across. And I, of course, love to promote what I do, the profession that I serve, the association I serve with, and the community that I live and reside in and serve as well. So this is like a win-win-win for me. So basically, as you'll see on the screen there, city manager. Does anybody in here know what a city manager does? All right, very good.
You like the business side of the city. You account for how much money it gains and loses.
That's right. That's one of the rules. That's exactly right. That's very good. Anybody else? Oh, very good. So that is part of it. That's the financial side. You're exactly right. On top of that, there's just a few more things that I do on a daily basis. I serve as the Chief Administrative Officer for the city. I report directly to the elected body. Who's the elected official in charge of Paducah? Does anybody know? Who's the mayor?
Harless.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, Mayor Brandy Harless. And of course, with her, we have 4 commissioners that serve. We have Commissioner Wilson, Commissioner Abraham, Commissioner Holland, and Commissioner Rhodes. So we have a 5-member board, and I report directly to that board. I am responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations of the city, while the elected officials are responsible for providing guidance for the direction that we take, the vision, the path that we move forward. I oversee the operations of general government, human resources, finance, like you talked about, fire, police, public works, which includes engineering, planning, 911, human rights, Section 8 housing, information technologies. One thing I do not have listed up there, public works also includes streets, also includes sidewalks, storm sewers, and solid waste, refuse, and recycling. And then, of course, the fire also includes building permits and prevention, code inspections, that type of thing. My background, prior to becoming a city manager, I was in the United States Army for a few years. I did that coming right out of high school. I graduated high school many moons ago. I went into the Army as a young lad of 17 years old. I actually celebrated my 18th birthday down in Fort Gordon, Georgia. And then after a few years in the service, I got out because I wanted to go into physical therapy and play college football. So that was the path I was going to take until I met a young lady who changed all my career plans and my life plans, and we've been married now for almost 25 years. So college football did not happen, and nor did the physical therapy thing. However, I did follow another path of mine that when I was a young lad that I wanted to do, become a police officer. So I did that for the city of Mattoon, Illinois. Does anybody know where Mattoon's at? All right, yes. I was a police officer in Mattoon for a little bit more than 6 years, like 6 years and a month, I think. And then after, during that time, I should say, I discovered this little career path niche that really interested me, city management. And looking at serving locally in a different perspective, not as a police officer, but at a different level, more of a hands-on business-related level in the city manager's office. Now it's time for some shameful plugs, right? So basically, just I want to share with you my educational path that I took. When one goes into city management, does anybody in here know how you would become a city manager? You had a bunch of answers. You got one for me?
Business marketing.
Not as often as you'd think. It's more of that's more of a private sector kind of niche. There's a lot of different ways that you can go into city management. The most common way is through a program called public administration. Or you'd hear it as you know what MBA is, right? There's also an MPA, a Master's in Public Administration. So that's kind of your most common way of going into city management. Other routes you can take are a little bit more less traditional. That would be a less traditional path. Engineers also go into city management. Police chiefs go into city management. Fire chiefs, parks and rec directors. My path I took was through a really kind of a roundabout way of getting there. Started out much like you. I went to a community college in Mattoon, Illinois called Lakeland Community College. I went there for a few years and got my associate's degree in law enforcement, which makes sense because at that time I was a police officer. I served at that role as a police officer. I thought maybe I'd try to go on for my bachelor's degree to become a police chief one day. Realized that probably was not in the cards for me at that department, and thought, what can I do? What do I really want to do? Do I want to be in the police department for my entire career, or do I want to do something different? I still had an affinity, if you will, for local government service, because it really is where it impacts the people the most. And so that's when I got kind of leaned towards the career path as a city manager. Went on from there to Eastern Illinois University, finished my bachelor's degree, and then went on from there to get my master's degree in political science with a concentration in public policy and administration. So at Eastern, they didn't really produce a lot of city managers, but they allowed me to kind of create my own path there and be able to focus on city management during my graduate studies. And in fact, I wrote my thesis that was called Apples, Oranges, and Grapefruits. It was a comparison of how public entities compared to nonprofit public organizations as well as private businesses, and how they operate, how they function, how they're managed, what the similarities and differences are. And it was a really interesting paper. From there, I was at a crossroads. Do I continue to pursue the public service in the realm of city management, or do I want to go on and get my PhD and go into instruction? Applied for both, was accepted to the PhD program for University of Illinois in Springfield. At the same time, got hired as an administrator, which is equivalent to a city manager, for a small town in Ohio, Union City, Ohio. So, of course, being married and 2 kids, I took the paying job. So I went the city management route. Stayed there in Ohio for 4 years, then went to Missouri for another 3 years. Then after Missouri, I went to Effingham, Illinois. As was mentioned here before, I was there for about 8 years. And of course, now in Paducah for 3 months. The profession, as just noted, it's a very rewarding profession. It's a job where you have opportunities to interact with everybody across the spectrum, as we're doing here today. There's no boredom. You don't go to work wondering what to do. You have plenty to do. And then, of course, the challenging part is when you actually get to work hoping to get something done, you have to be pulled away to do something entirely different. So it makes it kind of fun. It's very rewarding to be a city manager in the profession. The association that's involved with city management is the International City and County Managers Association. It's the ICMA for short. It is not just in Kentucky. It's not just in the United States. It's worldwide. City management as a profession really kind of hit the boom in the United States over 100 years ago. The birthplace of city management was in the Virginia, North Carolina area. A lot of positions in city management right now in those same states. Some states have more managers than others. Some states like Indiana and Kentucky are very few. Some states like Illinois, the Carolinas, Virginia, Texas, Missouri, Ohio have several. So if you go on to the International City Managers Association website, you can see the states and the communities that have managers and or administrators. And then, of course, jobs. And that's how I found my first job over in Ohio, was just going onto the search engine, looking for who's hiring, and then, of course, submitting resumes. In Paducah, who here is originally from Paducah? Okay, very good. All right. Paducah is a wonderful community, and I always tell people that when I first took the job, I put on my I Love Paducah hat. There's a lot of great things about Paducah that you can fall in love with. It's a strong commercial community, as that's evident if you go to the downtown area, if you go over on Jackson, if you go to the Midtown area, if you go out in the West End by the mall. There's a lot of retail development, a lot of restaurants. I would challenge you that it'd probably be impossible to eat at all the different restaurants within a year here. There's a lot of restaurants out there. Educational, we have some great educational facilities in Paducah, whether that be your secondary with Paducah Tillman. Of course, you have McCracken County here as well. And then, of course, you have college opportunities, as we're sitting in one right here today. And of course, we have Murray State across the interstate, as well as we have the School of Engineering from the University of Kentucky here. So we just have a lot of opportunities. And then to extend upon that, go downtown, the Midtown area, Lower Town area, where we have the art school. So we have a fantastic amount of educational opportunities in Paducah. And then I skipped one, didn't I? Medical, excuse me. Medical, 2 hospitals, clinics galore, specialists galore. You know, you have chiropractors, you have dentists, veterinarians. So if you can go throughout the community and see all the medical presence here. So, and then transportation. Of course, we have the maritime industries here, the river. We have the interstate system that comes through. We have a major highway network that comes through here on top of the interstates, as well as the rail. So we have a lot of things going on here. And that creates what we refer to in the city management world as a hub or a micropolitan center. So basically what that means is when people come here for work, there's a reason. Everything kind of gathers here, it accumulates here. Educational opportunities, it brings people in. Transportation allows them to come and brings people in for business and industry. You have the medical, of course, when you need something done, it brings people in and it gives people a quality of life issue, which we'll talk about later on. And not only for Western Kentucky, but we're a hub for Southern Illinois as well. So if you think about it, if you're going up the 24 corridor to get up towards Marion, anything south of the Marion area, we become that hub. Of course, Marion is its own hub as well. And then you get a little farther north, you get into the Effingham hub. Then also you go over to southeast Missouri, and we bring them from there as well. You could even say we bring them up from the Union City area in Tennessee. So we do provide this micropolitan area for the residents that live here, the commuters that come here, the people who do business here, and the people who come to shop here and get medical treatment here. The Rivertown is just a tremendous asset and opportunity for the city of Paducah. And the industries, in fact, Ken Wheeler sits right here. He took me for a tour just last week. Last week we took a tour of the rivers, and he explained to me where the Ohio meets the Tennessee, and all the maritime opportunities that we have all along the rivers there with the river industry, and what value that brings to the city of Paducah. Then of course we also have going on something that's a lot of you are probably aware of, the UNESCO Creative Cities. So basically we are one of just a few in the United States who are UNESCO Creative Cities. We are considered a city of crafts and folk art. And if you don't know what that means, which you might not understand the detail of that, but when we went out to, Dr. Reese, myself, and 50 plus others of the community went out to Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago, I got the opportunity to meet those in charge of the arts in humanities for the nation in D.C., and how important being a UNESCO Creative City actually is. It just opened my mind to that, because I'm not a big arts person, if you will, but it was interesting to me to see what value that brings to our community, and how that lifts us up in the eyes of the entire nation. And I can tell you this, Mary Hammond with the local Visitors Bureau really has been instrumental in promoting this. And she is seen as one of the leaders at the nationwide level, which is fantastic, and right here in Paducah. Well, today we're here to talk about sustainability and how that incorporates, how we as a city incorporate sustainability into our planning, how we incorporate sustainability into what we do on a daily basis, and how we incorporate sustainability long range. So we just went through the efforts and exercises, if you will, of doing a strategic plan. And I know a lot of people think that a strategic plan is just one more document that a community does, and then a few more years from now we'll do another one. A few more years from now we'll do another one. But that's not the purpose of this strategic plan. This strategic plan was done with intention. It was intentional, where we're going to identify actual action steps and hold the entire team accountable for those action steps. And throughout the strategic plan action steps, a lot of those issues we're going to reference here that equate to our sustainability efforts in the City of Paducah. Again, referring back to the association, the International City Managers Association, this is how they view sustainability. It views sustainability as a holistic approach to city and county management. This approach looks at how local government leadership can capitalize on the connections between economic, social, environmental, sustainability to create thriving and living communities. And from my experiences doing this now, this is my 15th year as a city manager, it's a holistic approach. It's just not one thing that you do, it's holistic. This thing here affects this, this affects this. It's all integrated. It all comes together, and you'll see that as we kind of break down the economic, social, and environmental. But it says on there that it's going to capitalize on the connections, again, because they're all interrelated. And we've seen that when we were doing the strategic plan initiatives, looking at how, okay, this we have, let's say, for example, we want to do some interconnectivity of our sidewalk systems and making sure that neighborhoods had the ability to connect one to another through a sidewalk system. Then we went to healthy infrastructure. We're talking about interconnectivity in our sidewalk systems. So it all interconnects. So one might be the economic development, well, the other one is going to be your social, which is your neighborhoods. All it's holistically connected. One ties into the other. Kind of drilling down a little bit, let's look at the environment. Property mitigation. So basically what we're talking about here is what are we doing at the city level with properties that are potentially contaminated, if you will. They have contaminants, unused, in disrepair, falling down, obsolete, that type of thing. So in Paducah we have a strong property mitigation arm that we work almost daily on throughout the year. We go in, we try to help property owners fix up their properties. In the downtown area, we do have grants available to help property owners stabilize their roofs if they're having some roof leakage issues, making sure the buildings are stabilized. We have facade programs available. More importantly, some of the property issues that we run into in town are some buildings that are beyond repair. They're beyond saving, if you will. So we do have monies that we put in the budget there to take down properties in that case. One property that we're dealing with right now is in the downtown area. Is anybody familiar with the Kresge building? It's a large facility there. It's been there for many, many years and sat there empty for a couple decades. And we're working right now to see what we can do with that, working with developers to see if we can get developers interested in building on site there. And while the city itself is looking at what we can do to exercise our authority to take some type of ownership on the problem and tear the building down, because it is a safety issue right now, and we want to make sure that we try to mitigate that. Stormwater management. You've probably seen a lot of things that we're doing right now. We're in the process of creating a stormwater master plan, and in that same vein, we're looking at possible ways to fund that plan. But we do have a lot of stormwater issues we have to take care of. We have a lot of flooding out in the community. As mentioned before, we are a river community, but interesting enough, a lot of the flooding that comes is not from the river, but it's from the water that falls behind the wall. And so basically we're trying to figure out what we can do with that water to get that off of our properties and make sure we mitigate that. In that same way though, through sustainable efforts, looking at alternatives, looking at rain gardens as an alternative for development, looking at the rain barrels for residential properties. So when the rain comes into the gutters, it collects in the rain barrel, and the property owner then can use the water to for their gardens, that type of thing. Also, employing new techniques, if you will, or requirements from the EPA to make sure that the stormwater runoff doesn't have pollutants in it. Making sure that the pollutants that might be picked up on a large asphalt parking lot doesn't flood into the streams and the river, and making sure we protect the environment. Solid waste reduction, recycling. Recently, the city adopted a curbside recycling program. So basically, we do have a curbside recycling program available for the city residents, residentially. We have not yet pushed that envelope out a little farther. We're still trying to build the program up. And this was based upon some results of a community-wide research, or survey, I should say, to see if people who would like to participate in that program. We do also have a drop-off point for recycling for the residents to be able to bring recyclable goods. And that does reduce the amount of waste that goes into the system. But also in that same vein, if you will, kind of bleeds over to the economic development portion of it, or economics. We work with businesses too to promote the reuse of their waste. And a lot of those companies are doing that on their own. When we make business retention visits, it's the norm basically to talk to people about what do they have left over, what's their byproduct. And they typically would have a customer for their byproduct, so there's zero waste going out from those companies. So basically, when you have a company who's really environmentally mindset's environmentally forward, and also at the same time, it's an economic boom for them too, because they're not actually paying to get rid of the waste; they're selling their waste to another company who's using their waste for another product. So basically, it's going to decrease the amount of waste going into the waste stream. Expansion of the tree canopy. And that goes with economic development as well. So that is actually a big plus a lot of people don't realize, is the amount of trees the community has is actually a big boost for your economic development. It lowers the cost of heating within your community, provides shade, provides economic growth, it provides, of course, it's environmentally friendly. And that's one of our strategic plan initiatives as well, is to expand the amount of tree canopy that we have in the city. By doing that, we work with the new developers. When they put in new developments, you're requiring them to do some green infrastructure, if you will. We also got to make sure, though, that we're looking at the sustainable approach, making sure that those trees we put in aren't going to be bad long-term for the community. So an example of that is if you took an oak tree and stuck that in the middle of a sidewalk landscaping area, that's not going to be a good thing, because it's going to get too big, it's going to blow up, and it's going to have to be cut down. So making sure we work with the property owners through our tree board to ensure that they understand the pros and cons of the tree species they're going to plant. Energy efficiency. Right now we're in the process of working with Paducah Power on making our street lighting more energy efficient, converting those over to LEDs, to making sure that we reduce the bill for the city, but at the same time protect our environment and the economy. And also on top of that, we're actually looking at all of our facilities, trying to get them a little bit more energy efficient, working on what we can do internally with the control of the heating systems, the lighting systems, that type of thing. Transportation. Transportation has a major impact upon environment. So here locally, we do have the Transit Authority, and they are very helpful with what they do, the services they provide. But we're always looking to see if we can increase the availability of public transportation to lower that carbon footprint, if you will. Making sure that on the transportation side too, that we start looking at the creation of charging stations for electrical vehicles. Right now, there may be a few, but we're looking to see if we can promote that a little bit better and also looking at other means of transportation. I know there's been talk about like bicycle rental programs and that type of thing as well. Composting facility, we do have a large composting facility down by the riverside where the brush from the community is taken to. It is actually then ground up and then combined. So we have a dual purpose here, combined with the sludge from the wastewater treatment plant. So we kind of help them get with their waste again, and they help us to provide basically the fertilization, the nutrients for our brush to become some nice compost made available back to the residents as well. So basically it's a nice reuse. So instead of going into the waste stream, we're reusing that and getting that back out to the residents. And I mentioned this before too, but it goes back to it again, the diversity of tree species in neighborhoods. That's another local initiative. Making sure that we're looking long term on what we're doing today and how it's going to impact us 10, 15, 20 years ago. A lot of the trees that you see out there that were planted, sometimes you can see if they're planted too close to one another. They kind of outgrow one another. You can see when the wrong tree species was planted in the wrong spot. And also, what you typically see is a whole neighborhood that has the same tree and the same age of tree. So, and I'll give you an example of that. We have, if you go out to Noble Park, you'll see a lot of the same trees, same species, same age. So what's that mean? Yeah, they're all going to die at one time, right? So we're going to have a massive impact on our tree canopy. So by dividing up, diversifying the tree species and the locations of those trees throughout the community, you're going to have those staggering ages because the trees live a certain amount of time based upon their species, the lifespan of the tree. And so basically you'll see a lot of a push for a diversity in the tree species. And of course our tree board is instrumental on that as well, working with the planning department. Economic. Again, it's a holistic approach. Some of these bleed over. Entrepreneurial development. Really making a push for sustainability to grow our own local businesses, to support our local businesses, to help them grow just like that tree species, to develop in the community, and basically blossom here to support ourselves and sustainable because it sustains in the community. They're from Paducah, they're grown within Paducah, we need them to stay in Paducah. Reduce and reuse corporate waste. I talked about that a little bit before, basically working with our local industries and businesses to make sure that their byproduct, their waste that they actually create through the creation of their product is then reused by another company for that product. One thing that comes to mind too, which didn't make the board, is one thing that Mr. Wheeler indicated to me out on the river though, falls right into this category. We have people that go out and dredge the riverbed, and they get sand. They take that sand, which comes all the way down the river, they collect that sand here and bring it right back here and create concrete from it. So basically reusing that mineral, which is fantastic. Balancing the development of today with the impact upon tomorrow. That's the long-range look at what we're doing. So basically we're making sure that when a developer comes to town today, they say they want to do X, that we're balancing it today for the impact it's going to create tomorrow for the community. Looking long-term, how does this fit within the community? How's this going to impact us 20 years, 30 years from now? Long-term versus short-term financial impact, the cost benefit. So basically, if we're looking at the impact upon the community, long-term versus short-term. Site plan requirements, zoning regulations, this kind of ties into these two as well. We're really making a hard look right now of re-understanding the zoning regulations that we have and analyzing them to see if it makes sense today. You know, granted, the zoning regulations we have are a few decades old. So looking back, the development of today, the impact upon tomorrow, and we're using the standards of a couple decades ago, does that make sense? So now we got to look forward to see how this is going to impact us. So we're looking at the site plan requirements that we ask for commercial developers, industrial developers, zoning regulations. And to give you an example of that, Who goes out shopping on Black Friday? Anybody go out shopping on Black Friday? I do. So, okay, so you're out on Black Friday. Where do you go?
I usually go like to Nashville.
Perfect. What store do you go to in Nashville?
We check out like the whole mall.
The mall, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you go to the mall, and you go. It's Black Friday. Can you get a parking spot?
It takes like 40 minutes maybe.
Try it.
Usually.
Try it. Anybody go to the mall here on Black Friday? Oh, I know somebody has to go to the mall here on Black Friday. There you go. Can you get a parking spot? No, you can't, right? If you go to the mall today, can you get a parking spot? Anywhere you want, right? You might even be able to park right in front and walk right in the front door, you know. I've done that plenty of times going to JCPenney's on a Saturday morning even, right? So this is what we're talking about. So when you have what I call the concrete jungle, the acres and acres of concrete or asphalt sitting there, that rainwater coming down, getting in all that oil, all that gasoline drippings, all that antifreeze drippings and running off, right? It just sits there empty throughout the year. That's due to antiquated site plan requirements and zoning regulations. Because basically what they're saying is you have X square footage of retail space, you're going to have this many parking spots. Don't ask me to change it, not going to. It's in the law, you're doing it, right? So that's what we're taking a look at because it makes no sense. It does for Black Friday, but you still can't park there anyway. You got to drive around and get your spot anyway, right? So working with the businesses, they don't want it because it's money to them. They're thinking, we don't want to have to put in 100 more parking spots, but that's CapEx. I mean, that's money that we don't have to put in. We don't want them to put it in because it's taking up valuable ground. And what's one thing that you can't make more of? Ground, land, right? So they're putting in parking spaces they're not going to need except for once a year, because we're forcing them to do that, and that's what we're trying to fix. Those type of things, and that's sustainable development right there, right? Because now instead of having that parking lot there, maybe there's another business there, or maybe there's some stormwater gardens there that we can utilize to filter that runoff. That type of thing, which also means it's pleasant to the eye too. It produces oxygen as well, right? So it's welcoming. It's curb appeal. So we're working on those site plan requirements, those zoning regulations. Promoting infill redevelopment, the downtown. That's another strategic plan initiative. Trying to get people to utilize what we have. Instead of going out by the mall and building a new building, why not use the building that we have? That's a good commercial building that has good bones to it, and we can promote the infill of those buildings. And we have incentive programs available to infill, to redevelop those buildings, and it's more sustainable long-term for us. What we don't want to happen is people to go out and build the Toys R Us, right, that sits there empty and abandoned. I call that the concrete dinosaur. So if we can get them to go into places that exist already and build up their business holistically, entrepreneurially, hopefully from the small business perspective, and build up and use what we have, or have somebody come in and infill those businesses, just like the mall just did with Burlington. You guys seen that Burlington opened on Friday? Has anybody been yet? Oh, there you go. All right, good. So basically they're infilling, and that's what we're trying to promote. It's more sustainable. Instead of building a new building, use what we have. Social. Quality of life initiatives. Basically what we're trying to do throughout the plan is enhance our quality of life within the City of Paducah. You know the number one problem we struggle with in Paducah? I got my I Love Paducah hat on, but you know the number one problem we struggle with? What is it?
Alcohol.
Well, that's a big problem. What else?
Drug addiction.
That's a big problem. What? Homelessness. That's a big problem. Keep going.
Underage people having children.
She's firing away. Anybody else? It's not the one I'm looking for, but those are quality of life issues. And they all relate to this.
Keeping young people local.
Yes, and maybe that's related to those things. Holistically approach, right? Population loss. The population drain. We're now a community of about 25,000 people. A few decades ago, we're a community of 36,000 people. Other communities are going up, we're going down. Quality of life here is good. We have a good quality of life, but I think it's issues like you're talking about, keeping the young people in the community, keeping them engaged, entrepreneurially, the hub of industry, the hub of jobs. It's all ties in together. Quality of life initiatives are very, very, very important to us at the city. And we have a good base. We have good quality of life here. We're not immune to the social impacts that you're talking about, those social issues that are nationwide. We're not immune to those. We have those, and we have to deal with those and hopefully mitigate those issues. At the same time, we have to promote and overcome those issues by increasing our quality of life. Access to healthy foods is one of our initiatives, trying to get healthy foods available throughout our community. We do have a thriving farmers market, which we bring in Kentucky Proud agricultural products, and we promote the Kentucky Proud agricultural products. And the farmers market is booming and growing every year. But we need to make sure that this doesn't happen on the Saturday each month during the season, each week during the season, that we get that out and available to the residents throughout the community. Neighborhoods. We have a full spreadsheet upon neighborhood initiatives we're going to do over the next several years, to build up and promote the quality of our neighborhoods and get people to be talking and working together and forming neighborhood coalitions and organizations and promoting artwork within the neighborhoods, promoting development within the neighborhoods, promoting interconnectivity of sidewalks and trails in the neighborhoods, friendliness in the neighborhoods. And I think those two will impact the things you just mentioned. Having somebody that you can talk to, you know your neighbor. Who all here knows their neighbor? That's good. Who all here talks to their neighbor? That's good. That's real good. In Effingham, I knew them. Here, I'm still learning. But you got to give me a break, though. It's only been 3 months. So you got to give some credit there. But so it's important to know who your neighbor is. So when they have a death in the family, you're there for them. You understand. You can relate to them. If they have an emergency car accident, they have somebody they can bring their kids over to, and they can feel comfortable that you can watch their kids or their pet, that type of thing. That's the power of being a good neighbor. You can help them out. When they're leaving town, that they know there's somebody there that can watch over their house for them when they're gone. Or maybe if they can't take their trash can out to the road, that there's somebody there because they had surgery, there's somebody there across the street who can grab their trash can for them. It's the little things like that that build up the quality of life for any city, and we can do that here in Paducah. Recreational opportunities. We have some tremendous parks here in the community. We're looking to continue to grow that, making sure that we have athletic competition events. We're looking at potentially investing in an indoor water facility. We're looking to make sure that what we have stays maintained, but yet grow it in the way of trails, and making sure that people have access to those parks and those trails, that there's interconnectivity from the neighborhoods to the park systems, so people can walk to the parks and don't have to get in a car to go to the park, to get out of the car, to walk in the park. Making sure we have some connectivity there. Diversity. We do have some great diversity in the community as well, and that's a positive for the community. That's one of the things that excited me the most about when I came to Paducah, was the diversity here in Paducah. The City Commission I typically served with when I was in my previous 3 communities is totally different than the City Commission I served with here. Totally different. I had 1 female council member when I was in Ohio. And when I was over in Missouri, I had 1 female council member. When I was in Effingham, I was fortunate enough to serve with the first and only female council member in the history of Effingham, Illinois, and she was quickly kicked out of office. Here, when I applied for the job, I was just so tickled to see the racial, gender, and age diversity on the board. And that showed me that we have a very progressive, educated, and informed and engaged community to vote those members in. And I was very pleased with that, very excited. And it's really neat to me to see the different strengths that each individual commissioner brings to the table, and the different personalities that each individual commissioner brings to the table, and the value of that diversity. So that's a positive that we have going for us. That's sustainable, sustaining what we have. Public safety. We have multiple public safety initiatives as well, reaching out, making sure that we're getting the youth engaged at a local level, making sure that we have education going on, of course, the prevention of fires, that type of thing. Making sure that what we have, who we are safe in the community, bringing us the social sustainability. If you're not safe, who would want to be here? You need to be safe in order to want to be here. And the quality of life all is holistic. It all bleeds in together. Arts and culture, I mentioned that before, the tentacle that brings in. And I'm not a big artsy person, if you will. I'll use artsy. I'm not a big artsy person, but the value is tremendous. The economic impact for the community is tremendous. The social impact for the community is tremendous. If you go downtown to the riverfront, you see the paintings, the wall-to-wall, the murals. How fantastic is that? And people have no clue. When they go there, they're just blown away by it. When you see the riverboats pull up, a few times a week throughout the several months of the season, what a tremendous thing. To see the culture that we have here in Paducah. The culture in Western Kentucky, for that matter, is just amazing. It's a wonderful thing that can provide us sustainability. And we have many initiatives on the arts and culture side. We're even looking at putting out pieces of major artwork in each of our commercial corridors and in each of our neighborhoods throughout the entire city. Historical preservation. We work tremendously on preserving what we have. It ties back into the culture and the arts. We have multiple historically preserved buildings, City Hall being one of them, going through that renovation of City Hall right now. And for the first time ever, on Friday, I was able to see the front of City Hall without the black tarp around it, if you will. They peeled off a portion of the tarp. I was able to see that for the first time, and I was excited. And basically, just to see the majesty of the beauty and the beauty of the building, it just looks so good. And being able to restore that building to its original state, if you will. And walkability, providing that social sustainability. Walkability, being able to walk, like I said before, from your neighborhood to another neighborhood, be able to walk from your neighborhood to a shopping area, being able to walk basically for anywhere you want to go. And we're working to try to put that together. That's one of the weaknesses that I picked up on originally when I came to Paducah. There's some gaps where there's no sidewalks. There's some gaps out there where I live in the west side where there's nothing. So if you want to walk, you're walking in the road. But we're working on that and trying to increase that walkability. And that's actually, I think, probably 3 or 4 of the action steps. So we're definitely working towards that. We've got 7 minutes to go, so I have time for some questions. Yes, ma'am.
Are you over the mayor or is the mayor over you?
That,
Or are you just your own entity?
that is a great question. The mayor is over me. So basically, not just the mayor, though, the mayor and the elected officials. So all of the commissioners and the mayor, it's the power of 3, if you want to look at it that way. So basically, 3 votes by the mayor and the commissioners at any time will give me my walking papers. So basically, I report to all 5 of them. But I consider, as any community I've served in before, I promote the office of mayor as royalty. And then I do what I can to support the entire elected body. It's a great question.
I have a question
Yes.
about biking in Paducah, if there's going to be where that is on the priority, and whether there's some connectivity between, I don't know, the main downtown area and then some of the park areas.
Yeah, great question. She asked about biking in Paducah and any plans for connectivity between the downtown area as well as like the park areas? And the answer to that is yes, it is part of our plan for that connectivity, for this walkability as well as any type of pedestrian traffic. We have plans to actually expand the trail system a little bit farther, but on top of that, we're actually in the process of doing a bike plan where we're looking at bike lanes within the city streets to encourage the use of bicycles throughout the community, as well as to make it safe. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned diversity earlier. I was wondering what plans, if any, you had to make the city more accessible to disabled people in the community, or to encourage people of color to interact with some of your neighborhood changes?
That's a fantastic question. We'll do one on the accessibility first. So basically, it's another one of our initiatives, which I didn't highlight, which goes back into making sure there's access and ADA accessibility throughout the city. We're looking at making sure the sidewalks that we do have are accessible for somebody who may have a disability. And then another one of our initiatives is actually the creation of a diversity council. And right now we're in the process of trying to fill that council and get them that council empowered and on board to help us generate more inclusion. We're actually looking at another initiative of ours is the creation of a multicultural festival that we don't have here yet, and just try to continue to grow those efforts. But we're going to lean really upon the volunteers to help serve in that diversity council, if you will, to help us to guide us in the direction that we need. One of the things that I picked up on also here was a lot of events that I go to, whether that be the Chamber of Commerce or whether that be the some nonprofit organizations, the Rotary, the Kiwanis, that type of thing. I don't see a reflection of the diversity that we have in our community in the census data, and we're trying to figure out why that is. So we're trying to make it so it's we identify why and then work on that why and trying to make sure that everybody's welcome.
Do you take interns, and if so, how can we apply?
Yes, we do take interns. We have actually right now we're in the process of creating more and more of trying to expand upon our internship program. That's one of the mayor's initiatives, to try to get more interns working at the city. That's actually part of the plan as well. So we have not come up with how to actually do that yet. Right now, she works with, Mayor Harless works with the local high schools and does internships for the juniors and seniors at high schools, but we're also going to expand that upon out to college students as well. So what I could do is I have some cards if you want to come up and get a card. So yeah, we are looking to do that. We're also partnering, we're trying to partner right now with Murray State University, because they actually have they're kicking up, if you will, a Master's in Public Administration program, trying to see if we can get people to intern at the city management level as well to promote the profession. Yes, ma'am?
I have like a two-part question. First, you mentioned how there's a lot of fast food restaurants and like places to eat around here, and that's basically for like people our age, that's almost all there really is to do. So, as far as the recreation, what do you feel about that? Also, this town has a lot of a few small local businesses, but it also has a lot of major corporations like Walmart and McDonald's and stuff like that, and they're taking a lot of money from the local people. And have you had any experience with anything like microfinancing, like local currency being made to keep local businesses having more money, and you know what I mean?
That's fantastic. It's a great concept there. Go back to your first one as far as the amount of local restaurants or fast food being the only thing to do. I guess it really depends upon stages of life, if you will, where you're at, what you're looking to do, then as far as like your abilities and time to do it. Because for me, since my arrival here, it seems like to me it's like one of those things. The community has so much to do, you wear yourself out. But it depends what you're wanting to do, what your focus is, that type of thing. Recreational wise, there's a lot of activities that go on throughout the year, both winter months and summer and spring months. But if it's outside the recreation spectrum and it's outside of the spectrum of shopping and eating, that type of thing, or watching movies, there's educational programs as well throughout the year, the arts and cultural events throughout the year. The library puts on a lot of good programs. And then your second thing, the microfinancing, I know some chambers of commerces have done that. I don't know if we've looked at anything like that in Paducah yet, but that's a wonderful idea. And we do support, of course, we encourage entrepreneurialism and growth. I know Sprocket right now is working on that endeavor. They work with the local high school, and they used to work with the Paducah Economic Development. So they work on that as well. So I could check in on that though and see if they've ever done that in the past. It's a great concept. We will put a monthly update on the internet on our city website. So if you guys want to check into the plan, see how we're doing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.